All praises to the horizon. Peace, wealth, and wisdom. It's the wisest man alive, Mr. Solace here. And today I want to do this video called The Ancestors of Mankind, the Black Albino. Now when I say black albino, I'm not talking black skin, but I'm talking what we call the black races. That albino, black man albino. And so I want to do this video, if you guys have the patience to hear me out, explaining the ancestors of all of mankind. Now, excuse me, I know I'm a little dry, I just got out the shower. So hold your jokes. But in any event, I want to do this video explaining how the black albino is the key to all the races you see, all the different variations of white races, as well as all the different variations of black races. The key to these things are the black albino. And so I want to begin this video. Now, in the beginning of our world, you had two races. The white albino, which is something that you guys do not see in today's times. And you had the black indigenous men. Now, black indigenous men, darker skinned men, the uncivilized, untouched. This is the beginnings of the world. On every continent, so you had black indigenous men. And then you had the white albinos. Now, I want you guys to grasp. These two races in the beginning of our world, so you can say these two races, the white albino and the black indigenous, they are descendants of the sperm cell and the egg cell. When I say that, fully grasp. All worlds are bodies. And so we know how bodies start. They start with sperm cells and egg cells. That union is how you get what we know as a world. And so it will be a body for, of course, the sperm cell that got the egg. And so this is your son coming to a world, or your sperm cell coming to an egg cell. And so you have to grasp. From that union, you can say the indigenous man, they are the physical life that descends from the egg cell energy. And the tall whites, they are the descendants of that sperm cell, or that fallen star energy. Sperm cell, sun, spirit, all these things being the same. And so we know sperm cells come from the testes. And so that's why I say the fallen, the testicles being the pits in the world. And so I want you guys to grasp. The white albino, in the beginnings, you can say is the descendant of the sun, or the sperm that got the egg in the world. The physical manifestations of those energies. And so, of course, they're white. The indigenous black men, so, of course, they come from, or they manifest from the energies of the egg cell, or the world. Now, I want you guys to grasp. When these two races in the beginning merged, that being the white albino and the black indigenous men, so you get what we know in today's times as a albino, a black person albino, where they have the yellowish look. The hair is like, they're just really light skinned, even the hair, yellowish. They look golden almost. And so from the white albino and the indigenous man merging, you get, as I said, the black albino. Let me shut this music off, I apologize. Now from that merging, as I said, you get the black albino. Now this black albino is the key to the variations of white races that we know, as well as indigenous races, which will become the black nationalities that we know. And so I want to explain this to you guys. Now, you have the white albino, you have the black indigenous men. Of course, when they merge, as I said, you get the black albino. Now, when this black albino, which of course is white-skinned, yellowish looking, as I said, when this merges back in with the white albino, so you get your red or orange head whites that we know of. Y'all are familiar with them as the Vikings. And so we talking about the beginnings, though, of all these different variations of white races and black races coming forth. And so when that black albino merges back in with those white albinos, so you get your orange or your redhead Viking-looking men. Do you grasp? Now, when those redhead or Viking-looking men, you know, the red, orange head whites, when they merge back in with the white albino, you get the blondes. And so you have to grasp the red, orange heads, they're like half black albino, half white albino. When they merge with the white albino, so you get the blondes. And so they're the closest to that white albino race. Do you get it? And so the same happens with the indigenous men. When that black albino was sent back with these indigenous men, so you get many different variations, meaning colors of skin, different features in the indigenous men. They are no longer just dark, black. But they're like my complexion, lighter, different variations in the indigenous men, but they're still uncivilized. Now, when these red-orange haired whites begin to colonize back in with these many different variations of indigenous men, this is how you get your black-haired whites. Simple thing to grasp. White people, black hair. When those black hairs merge back in with your red hairs, that kind of brought them forth from merging in with the many different variations of indigenous men. When the redheads and the blackheads, white people, merge together, so this is how you got your browns. So I'm explaining to you guys how you got your blonde hairs, your red, orange hair, your brown and black hair whites. From that, the black albino merging back in with the white albino, this is how you got that orange, red-haired white. We kind of familiar with them as the Vikings. And so when those orange, redhead men merge back in with those white albinos, you get those blondes. Y'all call them like the Nordic blondes. And so this is how you get in these different variations of white people. The blondes being the closest to that initial race, which is that white albino that, people don't see in today's times. Now, you have your blondes, your red, orange hairs, your brown and black white people, meaning their hair colors. Now, when the redheads, the brown hairs, and the black hairs merge back in with the indigenous men, of course, there are many different colors now, but they're still uncivilized indigenous men. And so when these red, browns, and black-haired whites come back and merge within with these groups, so you get what y'all know as civilized indigenous men. And so they take nationality, no different than you see today times. So you have all of the different black or colored groups, but none of them claim indigenous man of the land. They all have their nationality or thing that they claim, which is a matter of the land being named and colonized. Of course, this is all initiating from that white albino. And so all these white races are like, all these white races you can say are offsprings of that black albino and that white albino race. Of course, the black albino comes from the indigenous people and the white albino race merging, as I explained in the beginning. Now, the white albino can't really be around the indigenous and get them sick. They'll die. That whole Rh negative thing. And so it's the same with the red hairs, meaning the white albino, they can't be around the black-haired whites, the brown-haired whites, or the redhead whites because they may get sick. Why? Because they're close to that black albino, indigenous, you know, they have a lot of the genes of what we would call the indigenous in them. Of course, they're more white albino than indigenous, but they enough where they can still get them sick. And so the blondes are the closest you get to those whites, as I explained in the, you know, mixed breeding. And so it works the same with the black nationalities, which stem from those indigenous men. When you're dealing with the black nationalities or the indigenous men, they can't be around, you know, regular civilized people, as we would call it. Y'all know that from today times. If we have contact with them, they'll die. But this is not necessarily true. When you're dealing with the white races, when they have contact with them, they will die. But a lot of us black people, we could have contact with indigenous men and they wouldn't get sick. They wouldn't die. Why? Because that's the ancestors of us. And of all the white races, that white albino race is theirs. Now, of course, all the black races that you have and all the white races that you have, from blonde, orange, black to brown hair, and all the different variations of black races you have, we are truly just one race. Our ancestor being that black albino that merged back in with the indigenous and merged back in with the white albino. From that black albino merging back in with the white albino, you got all those many different variations of white people from that. You get it? This is why white people always have indigenous genes or blood in their line. Because of that, they trace back truly to indigenous man blood and that white albino. And so when you're dealing with the indigenous men, you get the many variations of them from that black albino merging back in with them. You get the many different skin tones, different features. And then, of course, when the whites, you know, your brown hairs, your black hairs, your red hairs, come back and begin to merge with the indigenous, this is how you get, you know, the civilizing, where they're no longer, you know, uncivilized. This being us, where we begin to take on nationality, do things like that. Now, the point of me explaining this to y'all, meaning the different races and things that we have here, because y'all are lost in nationality, and this is why I wanted to explain that to you. Now, the point of that is this. Those initial white albinos, these are what will become your fallen angels or sperm cells in the testes in a world. It's a very deep thing I want you guys to grasp. Like I said, all worlds are bodies. Worlds start from sperm cells getting eggs. Then from there, of course, you get a whole bunch of cells within that egg. And so that's the science of the biology of it. Now, in this real world, so, you know, those would be your cells. Like I said, their descendancy lies with the sperm cell. And I said the indigenous men, their ancestry lie with the egg cell. And so we know sperm cells are your fallen angels, or sperm cells that were in the testes in the world. And so they're avoiding that pit of judgment, that being the bottomless pit in the world, or the testicles, where they're left there dead. They're avoiding that from ejaculation. And so you have to grasp, when they come into the egg cell or that new world, they will still be the fallen angels, or your sperm cells in the testes after their life ends. You get it? And so this is why they do all that civilizing and colonizing, raising up the indigenous men in the way they do. To add to the sperm cells in the testes are the spirits in the bottomless deep. Meaning they're kind of sacrificing the indigenous men and their offspring, as well as their own. Meaning you got all the different white races from that same mixing and merging. And so all of us are kind of being influenced so that we're sacrificed to below, to fill up that testes or bottomless pit in the world. Now many of you guys will say, why is that important? Because when a world reaches puberty, of course a world is a body. And so when a world reaches puberty, you get ejaculation. And so you can say the devil that has been cast to the bottomless pit, he needs a bunch of souls to be added to that bottomless pit, so that when that world reaches a certain stage in its development, which we call puberty, because all worlds is bodies, this is how you get that ejaculation. When sperm cells fill up the testes, so a child reaches puberty. Now this happens because all the cells in the body, when they die, they return to the spinal chamber, meaning the energy within them, the spirits. And so, according to their thoughts, beliefs, things like this, will determine where they end up in that spinal chamber in a world or a body. And so we know sperm cells in the testes, so they're in the pits. Those are your spirits in the pits of a world. And so that's what all this colonizing is for, to influence you guys in the way that, we have been conditioned mind to believe the things we believe, live how we live, completely different than the indigenous men. This will cause you guys to add to the sperm cells in the testes. This will help, you can say, the devil get out of there. You say, how he gets out of there? When worlds ejaculate, or when bodies reach puberty. So this is how those fallen angels escape the judgment. The judgment being when the body dies, or the world dies. All worlds are bodies. So all bodies die, of course. And so the cell life within it, that's judgment day for them. And so the sperm cells in the testes gonna get it the worst. But of course we know, before the death of the body, usually they escape through their magic, As I said in the prior video, they steal the Spirit of God to open up below, to free the fallen angels, or the sperm cells in the testes. And so, it's a simple thing to grasp. That's what the Jesus story is about. The Spirit of God being stolen and brought to below, so that, the fallen angels can escape judgment. This is why it says, I seen a star falling from heaven, and was given to him the keys to the bottomless pit. Now you know what the bottomless pit is, so it should make sense now, like, oh, you get it? And so it's a simple thing to grasp. This is why it says Jesus was crucified with 2 thieves. Again, and steal the Spirit of God and bring it to below to raise up the fallen, and then they go to the exhale, a new world, but it's still a body. And so, of course, when it develops into one, still will be locked down below. And so you can say the religion, the influence in all the arts, the magic, the music, the sciences, all these things that we learn or was taught was for the purpose of that. Meaning y'all think the things y'all know is good, but when colonizers came and they taught indigenous men how to build big cities, they didn't teach them that wisdom for themselves. They taught that so that they can do it for them. You get it? Nobody's teaching you nothing just for fun or for free. No, that's stupid. If somebody's doing that, you have to have a brain to say, okay, they just gonna take the time out and teach me how to build cities and do all of this stuff for free? It gotta be something in it. Yeah, you gonna build all this shit for the colonizers. And so y'all work, live how y'all do. It's a deep thing. The religions y'all have, all these misperceptions y'all have. It's a matter of that. Y'all gonna be sperm cells in the testes. If you confused, if you're a Christian, you say like, at the end of the world, Jesus is gonna save you. Save you from what? Sperm cells in the testes. What Jesus said, he gonna come save you and bring you to a new heaven and earth. Again, sperm cells in the testes are raised up, and then they go into the woman's womb where they get an egg cell, which is the beginnings of a body, which is where sperm cells in the testes just left. They left a developed body, because of course that body's ejaculating. And so an egg cell's just an earlier body. And so I'm going to bring you to a new heaven and earth. Y'all don't understand what these things mean. But, so y'all are being sacrificed to below. When y'all feed into the nationality things. And it's a lot that y'all putting on y'all spirits. Because y'all know these things are lies. Because y'all would say, we all come from one. And we all one. And y'all don't act like it though. Y'all act like y'all separate. And it's a matter of, the being manipulated like a pawn. But as I said, just to wrap it up, you had your tall white albinos in the beginning of the world, and you had indigenous men. They are dark skinned or black. Your tall white albinos, y'all ain't familiar with seeing those. And so those were your only two races in the beginning. And like I said, you can say their descendancy lies with the sun and the world, all the sperm and the egg. Because it doesn't matter what level of life you're talking about. You're talking about sperm cells of suns getting egg cells of worlds. Even when you're dealing with the atom level of life, you got electrons getting protons, neutrons. And so it's the same thing is what I'm trying to get you guys to, grasp. Now, you had your white albino, your black indigenous. When those two merge, you got your black albino. Simple thing to grasp. Take a good look at black albino. Now, from there, when that black albino merges back in with those white albinos, you get your orange or redheads. Whites, I mean. When those orange or redhead whites merge back in with those white albino, so you get your blondes. And so the blondes kind of get more reverence than the orange or redheads. So it's probably like jealousy in there, and this is why the white races be beefing. And so from there you get your blondes, as I said. Now, of course, on the indigenous side, when that black albino merges back in with them, so you get many different skin tones and features within the indigenous man now. But still uncivilized, still indigenous man. Now, when those redheads or orange heads, who is kind of looked down on amongst the whites, because you got your white albino, and then you got your blonde whites, and they kind of like the great. You feel me? They like the white albino, what the white albino want to look like. Because they can't fit in with us. They look weird. And so they like the epitome of the mixture. You get it? The reds, orange heads, they're like, your beginnings. They should have reverence. But, this is how jealousy and things happen. And so those red and orange heads, of course, they're not good enough to be around the tall white albino. And so they come back and colonize, the indigenous man. Of course, the indigenous man has many different variations now. Skin color and feature-wise, I mean. But those red heads, orange heads, come back and mix and merge in with the indigenous men. And this is how you get your black hairs. Black-haired white people. If you're lost, y'all know the Vikings, which were your orange, red-hairs, kind of came colonizing the world at one point in time. And so it's a simple thing to grasp. When they mixed and merged with your indigenous men, so you get your black-haired white people. And so when your black-haired white people merge back in with their red-head, orange-head ancestors, of course, this is how you get your brown hairs. White people I speak of. And so you got your blonde hairs, your red and orange hairs, your brown and your black hairs in white people. And so they pick whatever nationality they choose, meaning whatever white nationalities you got, they fall into those four. And so with the black nationalities, all you truly got is just different variations of indigenous men. Meaning if you're Cuban, Colombian, Mexican, all the way to African American. You get it? Just different variations of the indigenous men. Dominican, everybody. Jamaicans, all the West Indies, all of that. You know? All your black people. Of course, if y'all got white or really light counterparts to y'all race, so it'll probably throw y'all off like, no, wait. It's like I said. They closer to that white albino side. And so we closer to the indigenous side. It's a simple thing to grasp. And so this is how you get all your black nationalities, meaning those different variations of indigenous men. Of course, from mixed breeding, they begin to call themselves, you know, after the colonizers' names and things like this. And so to give you an example, in America, you had indigenous men all over these lands. Then you had your white colonizers come. This be your people from Spain. You're Spanish. They come to Americas. There's no nationality and none of that amongst these indigenous people. They don't have tribal names and all that weird stuff. Just indigenous people living in the land. Now, I want you guys to grasp. Once colonizing happened, and so you get your first contact of mixed breeding. And so your first generations of, you know, mixed bred indigenous men. This is when you start to get your tribes, you know, your tribal names, you know, your Chickasaw and all of those things, your Niawea, where they're kind of civilized, but they're in the middle. But at that point, they're on their way to being, you get my point, lost, where they're separating themselves from one another. And this is because of colonization. You get it? And so it's a slow process. That first generation, so they're calling themselves tribes. You can say this is from 16 to 1700. By the time you get to the 1800s, so now, they're calling themselves colors. Like, I'm black, I'm African American and African Indian. You get it? They're calling themselves after names that the colonizers made up. Meaning African is a colonizer's name that they gave to Africa. The indigenous men in America wouldn't know of that name to even call themselves and say, I'm African American or I'm Indian. You get it? And so this is what I mean. By that time, they were already lost into the colonization. Kind of one with the colonizers. Which is treated like shit. And they go with it. I don't know why. Y'all know why. Y'all do what y'all do. But my point is that, you know, many of you guys are on your way to being, you know, fallen angels in the testes. And like I said in the past video, if you're promoting nationality, well, just know what you in for and what you kind of pushing out. It's the wise one here. Peace, wealth, and wisdom.